The rain hammered against our bedroom window like angry fists, and I lay there listening to my wife Jenny's breathing beside me. She was pretending to sleep again. Third time this week. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, casting a pale blue glow across her face, and she didn't even flinch. Most people would grab their phone immediately. Not Jenny. She'd learned to ignore it when I was around. That should have been my first real clue. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Rick Moran, and I've been building houses in this godforsaken coastal town for 15 years. I know how to spot structural damage before it brings the whole thing down. I should have applied that same skill to my marriage. Jenny stirred beside me, rolling away to face the wall. Her auburn hair spilled across the pillow like spilled wine, and for a moment I remembered why I'd fallen for her 8 years ago. She'd been different then. Ambitious, sure, but not cruel, not calculating. Her phone buzzed again. This time I watched her carefully. Her breathing changed slightly, became more controlled. She was awake and choosing not to answer. At 2 a.m, that meant one of two things: emergency or affair. Given that Jenny worked in HR at Hawthorne Tech Solutions and hadn't mentioned any company crises, I was betting on the latter. I slipped out of bed, my contractor's instincts keeping my footsteps silent on the hardwood floor. The house groaned around me, a 1960s colonial that I'd renovated myself, room by room, thinking we'd fill it with kids someday. Instead, we'd filled it with silence and Jenny's growing collection of expensive clothes she couldn't afford on her salary. The kitchen felt cavernous at this hour. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat at the breakfast bar, staring out at our backyard. The motion sensor light had triggered, illuminating the half-finished deck project I'd abandoned 3 months ago when Jenny started working late every night. Her phone buzzed upstairs again. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. Jenny was sitting up in bed now, scrolling through her messages with the focused intensity of someone reading something important. Something private. "Can't sleep?" I asked from the doorway. She jumped, nearly dropping the phone. "God, Rick, you scared me." "Sorry, heard your phone going off." "Just work stuff." She set it face down on the nightstand, but not before I caught a glimpse of the contact name. Deacon H., her boss, Deacon Hawthorne, the golden boy of our little town's tech scene, with his perfect teeth and his Tesla and his reputation for mentoring young female employees. Must be pretty urgent work stuff at 2 a.m. Jenny's laugh sounded forced. "You know how Deacon is. He gets ideas at all hours." "I bet he does." "I'm sure he does," I said, settling back into bed. "What kind of ideas?" "Nothing interesting. Just quarterly review preparations." I nodded, filing away the lie. In 15 years of construction work, I'd learned that people reveal more when they think they're being clever than when they're trying to be honest. Jenny thought she was being clever. The next morning, I watched her get ready for work with new eyes. She spent 45 minutes on her makeup, 20 minutes longer than usual. She chose the black dress that hugged her curves, the one she used to wear for our anniversary dinners. She sprayed herself with the expensive perfume I'd bought her for Christmas, the bottle that had been sitting untouched on her dresser for months. "Big day at the office?" I asked, sipping my coffee. "Just want to look professional," she said, not meeting my eyes in the bathroom mirror. After she left, I sat in my truck in the driveway for 10 minutes, engine running, trying to decide what kind of man I wanted to be. The kind who ignored the obvious and lived in comfortable denial, or the kind who faced ugly truths head-on? I chose truth. My first stop was Marty's Pub, the kind of place where construction workers grabbed breakfast and information flowed as freely as the coffee. Marty himself was behind the bar, a 60-year-old former longshoreman who knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. "Rick Moran," he called out as I walked in. "Haven't seen you in here during daylight hours in months." "Jenny's got me on a health kick," I lied, sliding onto a bar stool. "Coffee and information, Marty, in that order." He poured me a cup of coffee that could strip paint. "What kind of information?" "The kind about Deacon Hawthorne and his management style." Marty's eyebrows climbed toward his receding hairline. "Ah, that kind of information." "That kind." He leaned across the bar, lowering his voice even though we were the only people in the place. "Word is, Deacon has a very hands-on approach with his HR department, particularly the married ladies in his HR department." My coffee suddenly tasted like ash. "Particularly?" "Your Jenny's not the first, Rick. Won't be the last either, unless someone teaches him some manners." I set down my cup carefully. "How long?" 3, maybe 4 months. Started around the time of that big company retreat in Portland. The company retreat. Jenny had come back from that weekend glowing, talking about new opportunities and career advancement. I'd thought it was professional enthusiasm. "Marty, you ever been married?" 32 years to the same woman. God help us both. "What would you do?" He was quiet for a long moment, wiping down glasses that were already clean. "Depends on what kind of man you are, Rick. Some men pretend they don't see it. Some men leave. Some men fight. And some men get even. That too." He met my eyes. "But if you're thinking about getting even, you better make sure you're smarter than the other guy. Deacon Hawthorne didn't get where he is by being stupid." I left Marty's with a plan forming in my head like a blueprint. But first, I needed proof. Real proof, not just small-town gossip and suspicious behavior. That afternoon, I drove to Jenny's office building and parked across the street. Hawthorne Tech Solutions occupied the entire third floor of a glass and steel monument to new money, complete with a parking garage that screamed, "We're more important than you." I didn't have to wait long. At 5:47 p.m., Jenny emerged from the building with Deacon Hawthorne himself. He was everything I'd expected. Tall, lean, expensive suit, the kind of confident smile that said he'd never been told no by anyone who mattered. He had his hand on the small of Jenny's back, guiding her toward his silver Tesla like she was something precious and fragile. They drove to the Ocean View Motel, a place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. I sat in my truck across the street, watching the door to room 237, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. Not anger, exactly. Not yet. More like the feeling I got when I discovered termite damage in a load-bearing beam, the recognition that something I'd trusted was rotten at the core. They stayed for 2 hours. When they finally emerged, Jenny looked different, softer around the edges, satisfied in a way I hadn't seen in months. Deacon whispered something in her ear that made her laugh, and she kissed him right there in the parking lot like they were teenagers. I drove home and poured myself another bourbon, then another. By the time Jenny walked through our front door at 9:30, claiming she'd been stuck in traffic after a late meeting, I was 3 drinks in and stone-cold sober in all the ways that mattered. "How was your day, honey?" she asked, kissing my cheek with lips that had been on another man 2 hours earlier. "Educational," I said. "Very educational." The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Jenny seemed surprised, but not suspicious, probably relieved to have me out of the house so she could text her lover in peace. I spent the morning at the public library using their computers to research Deacon Hawthorne. What I found was interesting. He'd built Hawthorne Tech Solutions from nothing 5 years ago, but his client list was surprisingly small for a company that size. Most of his revenue came from 3 major accounts, and all 3 had connections to city contracts. Either Deacon was incredibly lucky, or he was incredibly well-connected. I also found his home address. Deacon lived in Riverside Estates, the kind of neighborhood where the houses had names instead of just numbers, and the homeowners association had opinions about mailbox colors. His house was a sprawling, contemporary thing with too many angles and not enough soul, the kind of place that screamed, "Look at me," to everyone driving past. But what interested me more was the woman I saw tending the garden in the front yard. Leah Hawthorne was nothing like I'd expected. Where Jenny was all sharp angles and calculated beauty, Leah was soft curves and natural elegance. She wore dirt-stained gardening gloves and an old sweater, but she moved with the kind of grace that money can't buy. When she looked up and caught me staring from my truck, she didn't look away. Instead, she straightened up and walked toward the street. "Can I help you?" she asked, pulling off her gloves. Her voice had a slight southern accent that she'd probably spent years trying to lose. "Sorry," I said, rolling down my window. "I'm Rick Moran. I do construction work around town, and I was admiring your landscaping. Professional curiosity." She smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "Leah Hawthorne. And thank you, but I can't take credit for the design. I just try to keep it alive. You're doing a good job. That's not easy with coastal soil. Are you looking for work? Because we've been thinking about adding a deck off the back of the house." The irony was perfect. "I'd be happy to take a look if you're serious." "Very serious. My husband keeps talking about it, but talking is about all he does these days." There was something in her tone, not bitterness exactly, but a kind of resigned disappointment that I recognized. It was the same tone I'd been hearing in my own voice lately. "When would be a good time?" "How about now? Deacon won't be home until late. He's been working very long hours lately." "I bet he has." Leah led me around to the backyard, which was as impressive as the front. The house sat on nearly an acre of perfectly manicured lawn that sloped down toward a small pond. The back wall was mostly glass, offering a view that probably added $50,000 to the property value. We were thinking something simple, she said, gesturing to the patio. Just a place to have coffee in the morning, maybe entertain friends. How often do you entertain? Her laugh was bitter. Not often. Deacon is always too busy, and I'm not really the country club type. We spent the next hour walking around the property, discussing deck options and materials. Leah was intelligent and asked good questions, but I could see the loneliness in her eyes. She was hungry for conversation, for someone to pay attention to what she was saying instead of just waiting for their turn to talk. Can I ask you something personal? I said as we finished up. Depends how personal. How long have you been married? 12 years next month. Why? You seem sad. Not my business, I know, but I recognize the look. She was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the pond. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who's been there. Your wife. I nodded. Jenny. We've been married 8 years, and I think she's forgotten I exist. At least your wife notices other people exist. Deacon barely acknowledges I'm alive unless he needs something. We stood there in comfortable silence, two lonely people recognizing each other across the divide of our failing marriages. I should get going, I said finally. But I'll work up an estimate for the deck and get it to you in a couple days. Rick, she called as I reached my truck, would you like to have coffee sometime? Just to talk. I don't have many friends in town, and you seem like someone who might understand. I'd like that very much. That evening, I watched Jenny get ready for another late meeting with new eyes. She was practically glowing with anticipation, humming while she applied lipstick and checking her phone every 30 seconds. Another long night? I asked. Probably. Deacon has been really demanding lately, but it's good for my career. I'm sure it is. After she left, I called my friend Sam Rodriguez, who ran a small landscaping business and owed me a favor from when I'd helped him build his garage. Sam, I need your help with something, and I need you not to ask questions. What kind of help? The kind that involves Deacon Hawthorne's Tesla and a very bad day. Sam was quiet for a moment. This about Jenny? How did you... Rick, everyone knows. I'm sorry, man. I should have said something sooner. It's not your fault. Are you in? What do you need? The next morning, while Deacon was busy with my wife at the Ocean View Motel, Sam and I paid a visit to the Hawthorne Tech Solutions parking garage. Deacon's Tesla was easy to spot, silver, pristine, probably cost more than I made in 6 months. Sam had brought his landscaping truck, complete with a tank of liquid fertilizer that smelled exactly as bad as you'd expect. We worked quickly and efficiently, like the professionals we were, a small hole drilled in the air conditioning intake, a few gallons of our special mixture poured carefully into the ventilation system, a dead fish wedged up under the chassis where it wouldn't be immediately visible but would make its presence known soon enough. Think that'll do it? Sam asked, stepping back to admire our work. Oh, it'll do it. Question is whether it'll be enough. What's the plan after this? I thought about Leah, alone in that big house, tending her garden while her husband screwed my wife in cheap motel rooms. I'm going to make some new friends, I said, and Deacon Hawthorne is going to learn what it feels like to lose something he values. We were back at Sam's place within an hour, washing the smell off our hands and planning phase 2 of what was rapidly becoming a comprehensive campaign of destruction. My phone buzzed with a text from Jenny. Working late again tonight? Don't wait up. I texted back. No problem. I've got plans of my own. The call came at 11:23 a.m. the next day, while I was having coffee with Leah at a small cafe downtown. She'd chosen a corner table where we could talk without being overheard, and we'd been discussing everything except our cheating spouses for the better part of an hour. Excuse me, I said, glancing at my phone. I should take this. It was Deacon Hawthorne, and he sounded like a man on the edge of a nervous breakdown. Rick Moran? This is Deacon Hawthorne. I got your number from my wife. I need to talk to you about some work on my house. Of course, Mr. Hawthorne. What kind of work? Not over the phone. Can you meet me at the construction site on Harbor Road? The old Morrison place? Tonight, around 9. I looked across the table at Leah, who was watching me with curious eyes. That's pretty late for a business meeting. This is sensitive. I'll make it worth your while. Cash payment, no questions asked. I'll be there. I hung up and smiled at Leah. Your husband wants to meet me tonight, about construction work. At night? That's odd, even for Deacon. I think your husband has figured out that someone's been messing with his car. Leah's eyes widened. You didn't. I did, and I think he suspects it was me. Rick, Deacon can be dangerous when he's cornered. He's not as civilized as he pretends to be. Neither am I. That evening, I drove to the Morrison construction site with Sam following a quarter-mile behind in his truck. The site was perfect for what I had in mind. Isolated, full of heavy equipment, and plenty of places to hide if things went wrong. Deacon was already there when I arrived, pacing beside his Tesla like a caged animal. Even in the dim light from the street lamps, I could see that his perfect composure was cracking. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair was messed up, and he kept wiping his hands on his pants like he couldn't get them clean. "Moran," he called out as I approached. "We need to talk." "About what, Mr. Hawthorne?" "About my car, about the fact that it's been sabotaged, about the fact that you're the only contractor who's been to my house recently." I shrugged. "I'm sorry to hear about your car troubles. Have you called your insurance company?" His face flushed red in the artificial light. "Don't play games with me. I know it was you." "That's a serious accusation. Do you have any proof?" "I don't need proof. I know." "The way you know about a lot of things?" Something in my tone must have warned him, because his hand moved toward his jacket pocket. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know about you and my wife, Deacon. I know about the Ocean View Motel. I know about your hands-on management style." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Deacon smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. "Your wife came to me, Rick. She said she was tired of being married to a loser. Said she needed a real man in her life." The words hit like physical blows, but I kept my expression neutral. "Is that what you told yourself? That she came to you?" "She did come to me. Practically threw herself at me at the company retreat. Said you were boring in bed and boring out of it." I took a step closer. "And you, being such a gentleman, felt obligated to help her out." "I felt obligated to give her what she wasn't getting at home." "What about what you're not giving your wife at home?" That stopped him cold. "What?" "Leah. Remember her? Your wife of 12 years? The woman who tends your garden and keeps your house and pretends not to notice when you come home smelling like cheap motels?" "Leave Leah out of this." "Why? You left her out of your marriage." Deacon pulled something from his jacket pocket. Not a gun, thankfully, but a tire iron. "I'm done talking." "So am I." I whistled sharply, and Sam's truck roared to life from its hiding spot behind a pile of lumber. The headlights blazed across the construction site, catching Deacon in their glare like a deer on a highway. "What the hell?" I didn't give him time to finish. I dove to the side as he swung the tire iron, rolled behind a stack of concrete blocks, and came up running. Deacon chased after me, shouting threats and profanity, but he was a businessman in expensive shoes trying to run across a construction site in the dark. I was a contractor who knew every hazard and obstacle on the property. I led him on a merry chase through the half-built framework of the Morrison house, around piles of equipment, and finally to the row of portable toilets that served the construction crews during the day. "Had enough exercise, Deacon?" I called out, breathing hard but not winded. He emerged from behind a cement mixer, the tire iron still in his hand but his expensive suit torn and dirty. "This isn't over." "You're right. It's just getting started." I pulled out my phone and hit record. "Tell me again how my wife threw herself at you. Tell me how boring she said I was. Tell me about all those long hours you've been working." "Put that away." "Make me." He charged, and I stepped aside at the last second. Deacon stumbled past me and straight into the open door of the nearest portable toilet. I slammed the door shut and wedged a 2x4 through the handle. "Let me out," he screamed, pounding on the walls. "In a few hours, Deacon. I want you to have some time to think about your choices." I called Sam over, and we loaded the portable toilet onto his flatbed truck. Deacon's muffled threats and curses provided a soundtrack as we drove through downtown, past the bars and restaurants where half the town would see us, and finally to the parking lot of Hawthorne Tech Solutions. We positioned the toilet right in front of the main entrance, where Deacon's employees would find him first thing in the morning, and remove the 2x4. "Sleep tight, Deacon," I called out. "Try not to think about what your wife's doing while you're in there." The next morning, the whole town was talking about Deacon Hawthorne's humiliating night in the portable toilet. By noon, someone had posted a video of his rescue on social media, and by evening, it had gone viral throughout the county. But the best part came when I met Leah for coffee again. "I heard about Deacon's adventure last night," she said, trying not to smile. "Terrible thing. A successful businessman like that, reduced to spending the night in a construction site bathroom." "Terrible," she agreed. "I'm sure it was very educational for him." "I hope so. A man needs to understand his place in the world." Leah reached across the table and touched my hand. "Rick, there's something I need to tell you about Deacon and your wife." "I know about them." "No, you don't know everything. They're not just having an affair. They're planning to leave their spouses and start over together. Deacon has been moving money out of our joint accounts, and Jenny's been telling people that you're abusive. The coffee turned to acid in my mouth. Abusive? She's building a case for divorce, claiming you're controlling and violent. Deacon is helping her find a lawyer. I stared at her, processing this new information. It wasn't enough for them to cheat and lie. They wanted to destroy us completely, to rewrite history so they were the victims and we were the villains. There's more, Leah continued. Deacon has been embezzling from the company. Small amounts, but consistent. He's planning to disappear with Jenny and start fresh somewhere else. How do you know all this? She smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, it wasn't sad. Because I've been watching him the same way you've been watching Jenny. And because I found his laptop password 3 months ago. What do you want to do about it? I want to destroy them both, completely and publicly and permanently. I looked into her eyes and saw my own anger reflected back at me, refined and focused into something beautiful and terrible. Then let's destroy them. The Coastal Arts Festival happened every year in downtown's Riverside Park, drawing crowds from all over the county for 3 days of local crafts, overpriced food, and small-town politics. This year, it was going to provide the perfect stage for the final act of our revenge. Leah and I spent 2 weeks planning every detail. She'd used Deacon's laptop to gather evidence of his embezzlement, bank transfers, falsified invoices, emails discussing the illegal movement of company funds. I'd been documenting Jenny's affair, collecting photos, text messages, and witness statements from half the town. But the evidence was just insurance. What we really wanted was public humiliation so complete and devastating that Deacon and Jenny would never recover from it. Are you sure about this? I asked Leah as we sat in my truck watching the festival set up from across the street. Once we do this, there's no going back. There was no going back the moment they decided to destroy our lives, she replied. At least this way, we control the narrative. She was right. For months, Deacon and Jenny had been writing the story of our marriages, casting themselves as the heroes and us as the obstacles to their happiness. Today, we were going to give that story a different ending. The festival officially opened at 10 a.m. By noon, the park was packed with families, couples, and teenagers looking for something to do on a Saturday afternoon. The local news crew was there, filming human interest segments about small-town life and community spirit. Perfect. At 1:30 p.m., Jenny and Deacon made their appearance. They weren't trying to hide their relationship anymore. Deacon had his arm around Jenny's waist, and she was wearing a sundress that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments. They looked like the golden couple, successful and beautiful and completely untouchable. They had no idea what was coming. Leah and I had positioned ourselves at the information booth, where we'd volunteered to help with the day's activities. It gave us a perfect view of the entire festival and access to the public address system. Ladies and gentlemen, I said into the microphone, my voice carrying across the park. Could I have your attention for just a moment? The crowd gradually quieted, turning toward the information booth with the mild curiosity of people who expected an announcement about lost children or parking regulations. My name is Rick Moran, and this beautiful woman beside me is Leah Hawthorne. We have a story to share with you today about love and betrayal and the importance of community values. I saw Deacon's head snap up from across the park. He started pushing through the crowd toward us, but he was too far away, and there were too many people between us. You see, Leah and I have something in common. We're both married to people who forgot what marriage means. People who decided that their own happiness was more important than honor, commitment, and basic human decency. The crowd was paying attention now. This wasn't the usual festival announcement. Leah's husband, Deacon Hawthorne, you might know him, he owns Hawthorne Tech Solutions, has been having an affair with my wife, Jenny Moran, for the past 4 months. They've been meeting at the Ocean View Motel every Tuesday and Thursday, and sometimes on weekends when they tell us they're working late. A ripple of shock and excitement ran through the crowd. People started looking around, trying to spot Deacon and Jenny, who were now desperately trying to reach the information booth. But that's not the worst part, Leah said, taking the microphone from me. Her voice was steady and clear, carrying the authority of absolute truth. The worst part is that they've been planning to destroy their spouses' reputations to cover their own guilt. Deacon has been embezzling money from his company to fund their affair, and Jenny has been telling people that Rick is abusive to justify leaving him. Deacon finally broke through the crowd, his face purple with rage. Turn off that microphone. Why? I asked, taking it back from Leah. Don't you want everyone to hear about your management techniques? About how you mentor your female employees? This is slander. No, Deacon, this is truth, and we have evidence. Leah held up a manila folder thick with documents, bank records, email printouts, photos, everything documented and verified. Jenny appeared beside Deacon, tears streaming down her face, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. She was already working on her next lie, her next manipulation. "Rick, please," she said, her voice carrying across the park thanks to the PA system. "You're embarrassing yourself." "Am I? Let me ask you something, Jenny. In front of all these people, in front of our friends and neighbors, are you having an affair with Deacon Hawthorne?" She opened her mouth, closed it, looked around at the hundreds of faces staring at her with fascination and judgment. "Answer the question, Jenny." "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. It's exactly what everyone thinks. You're a cheater and a liar, and Deacon is a thief and a predator." Deacon lunged toward the information booth, but Sam and 3 other guys from my construction crew were waiting for him. They didn't hurt him, just held him back while he screamed threats and obscenities that the whole crowd could hear. "The police are on their way," Leah announced calmly, "along with representatives from the State Attorney General's office who are very interested in Deacon's creative bookkeeping practices." That wasn't entirely true yet, but it would be by Monday morning. The crowd was eating it up. Phones were out, recording everything, and I could already imagine the social media posts spreading across the county like wildfire. Deacon Hawthorne's reputation was dying in real time, and Jenny's right along with it. "One more thing," I said into the microphone. "Leah and I want everyone to know that we're filing for divorce from our respective spouses. We're also pursuing criminal charges against Deacon for embezzlement and civil suits against both of them for alienation of affection." And, Leah added, moving closer to me and taking my hand, "We want everyone to know that sometimes the best thing that can come out of betrayal is finding someone who actually deserves your love." She kissed me then, right there in front of the whole town, and the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. It was partly for show, but mostly it was real, the culmination of weeks of growing closeness and shared purpose. When we broke apart, I looked out at the crowd and found Deacon and Jenny. They were standing apart now, no longer touching, both of them looking around at the sea of hostile faces with the dawning realization that their lives in this town were over. "That's all for now, folks," I said into the microphone. "Enjoy the rest of the festival." As the crowd began to disperse, buzzing with excitement and gossip, Deacon broke free from my construction crew and approached the information booth one last time. "This isn't over, Moran." "Yeah, it is. It's completely over. Your company will fire you by Monday, your wife is divorcing you, and the whole county knows what you really are. You're done, Deacon." He looked at Jenny, who was surrounded by a cluster of women she'd thought were her friends. They weren't comforting her. They were interrogating her, demanding details, feeding on the drama like vultures. "Come on," he said to her. "We're leaving." But Jenny shook her head. "I can't. I need to go home and think." "Home? You don't have a home anymore. Rick's going to throw you out." "Actually," I said, "Jenny can stay in the house as long as she wants. I'm moving in with Leah tonight." Deacon stared at me, then at Leah, then back at me. "You planned this whole thing." "We planned to tell the truth. Everything else was just a bonus." He walked away then, alone and defeated, pushing through the crowd that parted in front of him like he was contaminated. Jenny tried to follow him, but he didn't look back. "How do you feel?" Leah asked as we watched them disappear. "Like I can breathe again," I said. "How about you?" "Like I just got my life back." We packed up the information booth and walked through the festival together, hand in hand, accepting congratulations and condolences from people we'd known for years. Some of them seemed genuinely happy for us. Others were just excited to be part of the drama. But all of them understood that Deacon Hawthorne and Jenny Moran had gotten exactly what they deserved. 3 weeks after the festival, I was living in Leah's house and sleeping better than I had in months. The divorce proceedings were moving forward smoothly. Jenny had hired a lawyer, but the evidence against her was overwhelming, and Deacon was too busy dealing with criminal charges to be much help. Hawthorne Tech Solutions had fired him immediately after the festival, and the State Attorney General's office had indeed opened an investigation into his business practices. The embezzlement charges were just the beginning. They'd found evidence of tax evasion, fraud, and several other crimes that would likely send him to prison for years. But Deacon wasn't going quietly. He'd been calling Leah's house at all hours, sometimes drunk, sometimes crying, sometimes threatening. He'd driven by the house several times, sitting in his car and staring at the windows like he was planning something. And according to Marty at the pub, he'd been asking around town about hiring someone to take care of his problems. "We need to end this," Leah said over breakfast on a Thursday morning. "He's not going to give up until someone gets hurt." "What do you have in mind?" "I want to give him what he thinks he wants. One last chance to save his marriage and his reputation." She outlined her plan while I drank coffee and tried not to smile. It was elegant, simple, and completely ruthless. Everything I'd come to expect from the woman who'd helped me destroy our cheating spouses. That afternoon, Leah called Deacon and Jenny separately, telling them she wanted to meet to discuss a possible reconciliation. She suggested the Ocean View Motel, the same place where their affair had played out, as a neutral location where they could talk privately. "What makes you think they'll come?" I asked. "Because they're desperate. Deacon is facing prison time and social exile. Jenny's lost her job, her friends, and her husband. They'll grab at any chance to fix their lives, even if it seems too good to be true." "And what makes you think they'll come together?" "Because I told each of them that the other one had already agreed to meet. Deacon thinks Jenny convinced me to give him another chance. Jenny thinks Deacon convinced me to help her get you back." "You're diabolical." I learned from the best. We arrived at the Ocean View Motel at 7 p.m., an hour before the scheduled meeting. The place looked even seedier in daylight than it had when I'd followed Jenny and Deacon there months ago. Peeling paint, cracked asphalt, and a neon sign that flickered like it was having a seizure. "Room 237?" I asked. "Room 237, where it all started." We'd rented the room next door and positioned ourselves where we could see the parking lot through the window. At exactly 8 o'clock, Deacon's Tesla pulled in, followed 30 seconds later by Jenny's Honda. They got out of their cars simultaneously, saw each other, and both looked confused. Then Deacon's expression hardened into anger, and Jenny's face went pale with understanding. "They know it's a trap," I said. "They know. But they'll still go through with it because they can't resist the chance to blame each other for everything that's gone wrong." She was right. After a brief, heated conversation in the parking lot, Deacon and Jenny walked to room 237 together. Deacon used the keycard Leah had left for them at the front desk, and they disappeared inside. "Now we wait," Leah said. We didn't have to wait long. Within 5 minutes, we could hear them shouting at each other through the thin motel walls. Deacon was blaming Jenny for seducing him and ruining his marriage. Jenny was blaming Deacon for promising to leave his wife and then backing out when things got difficult. "This is better than cable," I said. At 8:30, we knocked on the door of room 237. "Room service," Leah called out in a fake accent. Deacon opened the door, expecting to see a motel employee. Instead, he found me and Leah standing there with a video camera and matching smiles. "Surprise," I said. "What the hell?" "We wanted to give you both a chance to say goodbye," Leah said, pushing past him into the room. "To each other and to this town." Jenny was sitting on the bed, her makeup smeared and her hair disheveled. She looked like she'd been crying, but her eyes were hard with anger. "What do you want?" she asked. "We want you to leave," I said simply. "Both of you, tonight, forever." "You can't make us leave." "Actually, we can. Deacon, your criminal trial starts in 6 weeks. You can either face it here, where everyone knows what you did and hates you for it, or you can face it somewhere else where you might actually find a sympathetic jury." "And Jenny," Leah continued, "your divorce settlement includes a very generous cash payment, enough to start over anywhere you want, but only if you're gone by tomorrow night." Deacon laughed bitterly. "You think you've won something? You think destroying our lives makes you better people?" "No," I said, "but it makes us even. We loved each other. That's not a crime." "Love?" Leah shook her head. "You don't know what love is. Love is staying faithful when it's hard. Love is protecting the person you married, not destroying them for your own convenience. Love is what Rick and I have now," she continued, taking my hand, "built on honesty and mutual respect, not lies and betrayal." Jenny stood up from the bed, her face twisted with rage. "You're pathetic, both of you, settling for each other because you couldn't keep your real spouses happy." "Our real spouses?" I laughed. "Jenny, you stopped being my real wife the first time you spread your legs for Deacon. And Deacon stopped being Leah's real husband the first time he chose his dick over his marriage vows. At least we had the courage to go after what we wanted. You had the selfishness to take what you wanted without caring who got hurt. There's a difference." Deacon moved toward the door, but I stepped in front of him. "We're not done yet." "What else do you want?" "We want you to understand something. This isn't just about the affair. It's about the lies you told afterward, the way you tried to make us the villains in your story, the way you planned to destroy our reputations to cover your own guilt." "That was business," Deacon said. "Nothing personal." "It was completely personal, and so is this." I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. It was a live video feed of the motel parking lot, where a crowd of about 50 people had gathered. I recognized faces from the construction site, from Marty's pub, from the festival. "What is this?" Jenny asked. "Your going away party," Leah said. "We may have invited a few people to witness your departure." Deacon looked out the window and saw the crowd. Some of them were holding signs. Cheaters go home, and good riddance, and other, less printable sentiments. You can't do this. We're not doing anything. We just mentioned to a few people that you might be leaving town tonight, and they decided to come say goodbye. This is harassment. This is consequences, I said. For 4 months, you two have been the talk of this town. People have been watching and judging and taking sides. Now they get to see how the story ends. Jenny started crying again, but this time it seemed genuine. Rick, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. Start over. Jenny, stop. Just stop. We're done. We've been done since the first time you fucked Deacon in this room. But I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of not having to face the consequences of your choices. You love the idea of keeping me as a backup plan while you figure out what you really want. That's not true. It's completely true. And even if it wasn't, it wouldn't matter, because I don't love you anymore. I love Leah. I turned to Leah and kissed her, long and deep, while Deacon and Jenny watched. When we broke apart, Leah was smiling. She's incredible, I said, loud enough for both of them to hear. In every way that matters. Deacon's face went red, but he was trapped. The motel room, the angry crowd outside, the threat of prison and total social exile. He finally understood there was no way out. He said it wasn't over. I told him it was, completely. They were leaving that night and never coming back, or what happened at the festival would feel like a polite chat. Leah waved at the crowd. They roared back, ready for his exit. Deacon and Jenny looked at us, then at the people waiting outside, and finally cracked. He said this wasn't justice, just revenge. I told him that sometimes they're the same thing. We walked them out as "Hit the Road, Jack" blasted from a speaker, and people hurled questions and insults. They drove off, Deacon in his Tesla, Jenny in her Honda, and disappeared into the dark highway. The town slowly scattered, stopping to clap us on the shoulder and say they were proud we stood up for ourselves. When it was finally just Leah and me under the stars, she asked how I felt. I told her the truth, free. We decided to go home, to our home, and start something real. As we drove through our quiet coastal streets, I thought about the man I'd been, naive, half asleep, letting other people write my story. That man was gone. Deacon and Jenny were out of our lives, reduced to cautionary tales. Leah and I, scarred but honest, were finally at the beginning of ours.